Hello everyone, it's Paul and welcome to another installment of my Blackrock Foundry raid guide. In today's video, I'm going to cover the blast furnace encounter on heroic difficulty. This is a three-phase fight, and during the whole fight you'll be going against adds and the heart of the mountain, which is currently trapped in the furnace itself. For phase 1, you'll be splitting your raid into two or somehow managing to handle both sides, which have a heat regulator. In phase 2, the heart of the mountain will actually hop out of the furnace and 4 elementalists will spawn on these colored marks that we have in the center of the room. And in phase 3, the heart will be free because you've killed all of the elementalists, and you will actually kite it around the room, utilizing pretty much the whole room as you go for the kill. Now there's a lot of adds here, so what I'm basically going to cover, rather than going in depth into every single ability, I'm going to talk about how to handle them as a whole and cover the abilities that actually make the biggest difference and the ones that you really need to worry about. The way we actually start phase 1 is we pull everything over to the right side, and that is the Feldspar side. So this can be mirrored on the other side, but you want to pull all the adds over to where Feldspar is. Then all of our DPS will go ahead and blow up both of the operators. You'll see that we have ranged on the left side, that is the side with the white and green markers in the center, and the melee and a couple ranged will be over here on the right, blowing up this operator. Now as soon as that operator's dead, we're going to go ahead and swap to Feldspar and do as much damage as we can before the next set of adds comes out. The reason we do this in this manner is because Feldspar being as low as possible when you transition into phase 2 really helps you speed through that phase and keeps the damage very manageable for your healers. Now Feldspar actually only does 2 abilities that your raid needs to worry about. First of these is called Pyroclasm, and this should be interrupted by either the tank or any available raid member. The second ability is called Rupture. This will place a debuff on a member and cause them to drop a damaging void zone shortly thereafter. Everybody should go ahead and run this to the outside of the room to give yourselves as much space as possible. The other 3 types of adds in this phase of the fight are Bellows Operators, Furnace Engineers, and Security Guards. That order that I just said them in is actually the kill order. So whenever there's a Bellows Operator up, you want to go ahead and kill them as fast as possible. And this is because these guys will increase the heat of the furnace and make Blast, which is the furnace ability, do a lot more damage to your raid. The Furnace Engineers are actually the most important adds in this phase of the fight. These guys will drop bombs on random players, and when they are killed will actually drop a bag of bombs that you will need to pick up and run to the heat regulators. Like I said earlier, the heat regulators are the way that you get out of this phase, and each bomb does about 10% damage to the health of a regulator. Now right there you just saw an engineer try and cast Repair. Every now and then they'll run over to a heat regulator and try and repair it. You want to cancel this out every time. You cannot let that go off, otherwise it'll throw off the balance that you have between the two sides and likely cause a wipe. The security guards that I'm tanking here do a fair amount of tank damage, and they'll put down those big purple circles on the ground. Those circles basically make mobs standing in them pretty much immune. The exception to this is any mob that you cannot move. So this means that Bellows Operators, while they're on the furnace, are not affected by this debuff, and same thing goes for the Primal Elementalist in phase 2. Now you want to go ahead and push this phase when the 3rd Bellows Operator dies, just like we did right there. The reason for this is that the Bellows Operators do a huge amount of tank damage and a frontal cone attack when the heat regulators both die. This will make them basically free running mobs, and it's a big amount of hurt. You do not want to do this. Now the biggest thing I should stress here is that handling bombs and getting out of phase 1 really comes down to your raid composition. It took us a fair amount of wipes to figure out exactly how we wanted to approach it. The other factor that comes into this is how you want to handle Feldspar. You really want it to be basically between 20 or 30% when you enter phase 2. Now what you'll see here is somebody's actually going to drop a Rupture right there. That's what it looks like. Again, you want to run those to the outside of the room. Phase 2 consists of 4 stationary Primal Elementalists that are holding the heart of the mountain in place in the center of the room. When these Elementalists spawn, they are actually immune, and the way you get rid of their immunity is you kill a Slag Elemental right on top of them. Slag Elementals spawn throughout the fight and will actually be resurrected by the heat that is blasting from the furnace. Now this right here is where you're actually going to go ahead and test your raid and see if you're going to be able to defeat this encounter with the setup that you're already going into it with. My personal recommendation is you want to be able to kill at least 2 of these Primal Elementalists in one shield. While you are DPSing them, you should have somebody keep an eye out for the reactive earth shields that get put on them, and have them either spell steal it or dispel it. There is a new type of ad in this fight called a fire caller. These should be picked up by one of your tanks and tanked on top of the current elementalist target. These ads will have an ability called Cauterize Wounds, which is just a straight up 20% heal that needs to be interrupted as often as possible. And they'll put out this debuff called Volatile Fire, which you see here. People need to spread out with this debuff and avoid standing next to other players because it will explode and deal damage to everybody that is within the radius of the ability. Security guards will also continue to spawn, and they are identical to those from phase 1. These should be picked up by your other tank and kept far away from the current elementalist target as well as the fire callers. The goal here in phase 2 is to get through this as fast as possible. So your biggest challenge is coordinating moving slags to elementalists, killing the elementalists, then killing fire callers, and then repeating that process 4 times. During this whole time, you need to also be watching out for volatile fire, and you need to have a couple members dedicated to help out the tank with the security guards should he start taking way too much damage. Now, a couple of things to note is we actually burn all 3-minute cooldowns on the first elementalist that we need to kill to make sure that we can get him down in one go. Those 3-minute cooldowns will also be up for the 4th elementalist, which is when the fight starts getting a little bit more difficult on the healers, and you want to push phase 3 as fast as possible. So again, phase 2, it's a lot about coordination and figuring out where your raid stands DPS wise and getting the right balance between multi-target and single target DPS going so that you get enough single target on the primal elementalist, but you're never overwhelmed with ads. Another thing I should mention is the slag elemental kiting. These will fixate on a random raid member. The raid member that's assigned to bring his slag elemental to an elementalist should go there and then stay there. Now, the big thing that fucked us up a couple of times is somebody actually interrupted the slag elemental, which makes them go ahead and try to melee the person they're attacking. If that person has moved away from the elementalist, that elemental can just randomly run away right as you're killing him. And that actually causes us a couple of wipes. So hopefully avoid that and have your people stand right on top of that elementalist when they're the ones that are assigned there. If your DPS is on point and you're familiar enough with the phase to where you're selecting the correct targets, you should only ever really have 2 fire callers up at a time. Again, I would recommend killing these off between each elementalist, because if you have 3 or 4 of them up, it becomes really difficult to interrupt all of their heals, and they can hit elementalists with those. But that being said, if you can pick up and tank all of the fire callers on the elementalists themselves, it eliminates a lot of the complications that they bring to the fight. And like I mentioned before, when you are actually DPSing the elementalist, you need to make sure that somebody is purging him, because that can fuck your day up real quick as well. I will say that when you get this phase down, it does become a lot easier. But for a long time, for us especially, it was kind of chaotic, and we were trying a lot of different things and figuring it out, which may work for you in the end. But this is the way that we decided to do it. I know some people actually tank security guards on top, you tank fire callers in between. All of that can work and might work for you. Biggest thing here, get through this as fast as possible with as few ads up as far as the fire callers and security guards are concerned, and get into phase 3. When phase 3 actually comes, the Heart of the Mountain will become active. And the biggest thing here is that means it can be affected by these security guards as shields. So for your tanks to worry about when you get them into your initial position, make sure there's no purple shield right under there. Otherwise, he will be taking very much reduced damage. With that in mind, it is important to note that his hitbox is not actually as big as his targeting circle. So as long as his model isn't necessarily standing right in the purple shields, you'll be okay. So here we actually push phase 3, and this, mechanics wise, is actually the easiest part of the fight. What we do is we put him here on the red X, which is just in front of the destroyed heat regulator from phase 1, the left side one. And then we have the raid stack kind of on the outside edge and towards the back corner of the room. And the reason for this is that the boss will put a debuff called Melt on random ranged players. The way that Melt works is it will put a large void zone underneath you when it expires. So you want to be away from the raid when you drop it. And the reason we do it like this rather than going all the way to that corner is you have about 6 seconds to run this debuff out. So the biggest thing that everybody in your raid needs to be watching out for is handling Melt. Again, phase 3 comes down to Melt placement 100% of the time. You should also do a much better job than we're doing here about clearing off the security guards. The reason for this is they'll drop the fucking little purple shields, and that interrupts damage that's going on to the boss. Like right there, he's actually sitting in it, and I taunted and pulled him out. Now, once all the security guards are dead, it really settles down. Again, the slag elementals get resurrected throughout the fight, so there's absolutely no point in putting DPS into them. At this point, all you really need to do is single target the boss and worry about the melt. So it really calms down and you're really able to focus in on your damage. Also, we use heroism at the start of the fight, and it will actually come back up at this point of the fight unless you're pushing some crazy mad skill DPS, and then you don't need this video at all. During phase 3, your tanks will actually have to worry about a debuff called Melt. Go and swap at about 3 stacks or earlier if your debuff has worn off. And the longer the fight goes on, the more damage your tanks are actually going to take because of a debuff called Tempered. That just increases straight damage done to you. So get through it quick, but it's pretty much just all about dropping the melts in the correct place. And really that just about covers all of the fight. The fight really comes down to phase 1 and phase 2. The transition between 1 and 2 being the most difficult thing to figure out depending on your raid group. The transition between 2 and 3 is actually very difficult as well, but it really just comes down to your healers being able to keep everybody alive and people not getting hit by volatile fires and killing off the ads very quickly. Now, I will go ahead and say that even though the mechanics of this fight are relatively simple, the fight itself is actually pretty difficult and is on a different difficulty level. So there's a step up from maidens to this, and then again from this to black hands. Some actually put those pretty equal. So go ahead and be focused, and maybe we'll have some heroes like we have here with one of our warlocks.
Moving Melt back. This is probably gonna kill me.
It's too late to turn back now. We have slain the sacred cow. In paradise we are bound.
Alright guys, and we end up getting the kill here. So once again, thank you for watching, and I'd like to point out, I'm almost at 250,000 views on YouTube, and you guys made that possible for me. So to give back a little bit, I think probably on a Sunday night, I'll be doing a giveaway on my Twitch stream. I'll have the details at the end of the Blackhand vid, which should be here in the next couple of weeks when we get that down. So again, thank you guys so much for watching these videos. Hopefully they help you out. I enjoy making them tremendously. So as always, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time.